Wow, okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very intimate fireside chat in the largest room I could have possibly imagined. This is not what I had pictured when we pitched this, but that's okay. This is still very lovely. Just before we start, before we introduce ourselves, I wanted to do a little quiz, a little poll of sorts. So if everyone could raise their hand. And now, keep your hand up if you've been in the industry for longer than 5 years. Longer than 10 years. Okay, cool. Longer than 15 years. Longer than 20 years. John, why isn't your hand up? Keep your hand up.
And
longer than 25 years. Longer than 30 years. Longer than 35 years. Longer than 40 years.
Well, stop there. I think we had a lot of people there with their hands up for quite a while.
Yeah, I think we're kind of skewed by a lot of people we know have come, which has kind of like aged up the crowd slightly. But yes, when Sav asked me to do a talk and to pick like a experienced developer, there was really one person that came to mind. So, John, would you please introduce yourself to the crowd?
Yes, I think most people know me. I'm John Passfield. I've been making games since, the first kind of commercial release was '84, and that was kind of by accident that I made a game and sent it off to a company and they published it for me, so I got a cassette tape out there in the real world. And I've been making games, obviously, Chrome Studios, worked at Pandemic with people here in the audience, and yeah. That's my
cool.
career. Yeah.
And by comparison, my name is Luke. I was born in 1984. And I'm a designer by trade, I guess. I was at Half Brick Studios for a long time. Started a new studio. We got acquired by Snapchat, and now I'm a solo indie developer. And so yeah, when we like kind of wrote the tagline for this talk, it was like combined more than 50 years experience, but really that's mostly John, so. Okay, so John, I really want to hear the story of making your first game, because I mean, immediately the words cassette tape sounds interesting to me.
It does, yeah. And I was sort of having a lot more young people here to bring it around full circle. But yeah, so I started in high school. That was back in the days when Dick Smith had a thing called the VZ200 computer. That was my first computer I got as a kid. And then the following year we had a Microbeat, which is a computer that's sold into schools. And what was great was each of these, you turn them on and they boot up into BASIC, essentially. So my first game was, and how I started with my first game was, I was playing the local arcades in a country town I grew up in called Kyogle. And there was each tuck shop had the sit-down cabinet machines, and I was obsessed with a game called Pengo, which was you push ice cubes around. And so I think it was when I graduated grade 10, people saying grade 11, I decided to make my own version of that game on the Microbeat. So yeah, cassette tape. And again, learning back then was just through getting magazines that had printouts in them. That's how things worked back in those days. So it was really much a case of just like having no real resource beyond looking at screenshots from American magazines of games and then following listings along. So yeah, so I just basically learned how to program over the Christmas vacation and made my own version of Pengo, which I called Chili Willy. So I broke 2 copyrights. I ripped off a Walter Lantz cartoon and ripped off a Sega trademark. And just on a whim, I decided to send it down to a company called Honeysoft in Gosford. And I think probably a month or 2 later, they wrote back saying, "This is great, we'll publish it." And that was how I got published. So that was so that was how I started. It was all on the machine in BASIC.
So you started as solo indie developer?
100%, yes. And I didn't tell any of my friends at school because it was such a nerdy thing, so no one knew what I was doing. Maybe 1 or 2 friends who were into computers, but no one else had any idea.
And it was on a cassette tape?
Yep, cassette tape. And I think, yeah, one of them maybe sent, I had 2 cassette tapes and I gave one to, I think, maybe Chris O'Neill maybe have it, or, yes, which is it's kept away in an archive now, so for safety. Yep.
That is wild.
That's right. But your experience must be different. What was your...
Yeah, so because it's interesting, I feel like I haven't been in the industry that long, but obviously as I've been around longer and longer, it starts to feel, more and more people are like, wow, that seems like a long time. And so the first game I worked on, at least as a designer, was for the Game Boy Advance. It was right at the, it makes it sound older than it is a little bit. The DS was already out, and this was right at the end of the GBA life cycle. And it was the Avatar, The Last Airbender, Into the Inferno, which was season 2, I think, of the Avatar series. And the things that I remember about making that game was, and Chenille's in the audience, and he might remember the details better than I do. But the two things I remember was, one, it had to fit in 4 megabytes, I believe, and that was as much space as we had.
Wow.
Luckily, the screen is tiny, so you can pack a lot of graphics in. And the other thing I remember is that THQ, the publisher, really didn't want to put an EEPROM in the cart, which is what held save data. So it was an adventure game, and we weren't allowed to save any data, so we had to have this like dumb password system. And you know, that feels insane now.
It is insane.
In fairness, we thought it was insane at the time. Like, there was a bunch of us that were very upset about these restrictions. It's hard to, Jordan this morning said that like restrictions can make things better. Taking away the restriction of like a save file, I don't think is one of those improving restrictions personally.
That's crazy. But before that, did you get into Heartbreak? You studied? I know the answer to this one, but you did.
Yeah, so I went to university. I did like a double degree. It was like the games degree, but it wasn't really. At no point during my 4-year degree did anyone educate me who had made or released a game before. It was mostly like an IT degree and an art degree stuck together, and it made me realize I was bad at programming and bad at art. So I became a designer. And actually, when I started at Halfbrick, I did the interview for the game designer role, and I didn't know really what a game designer was. And I was getting the questions, and I was like, oh, this is actually the things I'm good at, kind of accidentally. I always thought design was more the art side of things, like visual design, because nobody at university told us what the roles were in a games team. Anyway. Because obviously you've had a very long career, very storied career, and I know that to go through that step by step it's
boring.
A lot. It's not boring. It'd be fascinating, but it'd also be a lot. I mean, to start, I was going to ask you what like your highlights of your career might be if you were going to sum it up. But let's flip it the other way, because I think it's interesting to be in this industry for a long time. It's not because a whole bunch of good things happened to you. I think it's because you've probably had to endure some hard things along the way. I'd love to hear a couple of like lowlights of your career.
Yeah. Okay. So I think one of the big ones people can relate to here, I think, is the GFC when that happened, because we were Morgan's here as well, I believe. Pandemic Studios was going quite strong, and then everything started to fall apart with the GFC, and things started closing down, and EA was shut down. EA had bought Pandemic, I was working for at the time. So that was probably a low point. I know Morgan stuck it out with the team trying to get stuff going, but yeah, that affected everybody. That was definitely a low light. That wasn't terribly fun. Everyone can relate to. Prior to that, I think another one would have been just moving on from Chrome, because we had a really nice team there working with the studios we'd founded, and it was sad to say goodbye to everybody at that point. So, but I've kept in touch with everybody, which has been lovely. So they're probably the two late.
I remember. I have a vague recollection of being at the 2010 GCAP, and like during the keynote was when, or like right before the conference started, was when the news broke that Chrome is shutting down. Does that sound right, or am I misremembering something? That was crazy.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right, at the Gold Coast.
Domino effect where everything started going to...
And it was like that scene in The Big Short where the market starts to crash midway through their talk, and everyone's doing their little side chats and not really listening to what's going on. It was... Yeah. I mean, obviously, I wasn't involved in that, but I remember where I was sitting when that started to go down.
It's weird because it's like, I guess, blocking a lot of that out of your memory, but I do remember clearly things like after that was, Heartbreak was just like that kind of rising from the flames and suddenly dominating the world with Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride. And I remember that was great to see that could be done. Which you could probably talk more about that. I'm not sure.
I mean, yeah, it was quite surreal when. It's also because, like, although from the outside it probably looked like it happened overnight, it didn't feel like, to me at least, that it happened overnight. Like, when Fruit Ninja first released, we were like, wow, this is doing better than we expected, and it kind of built up, kept on building up in a way that it felt like, to me at least, it might stop, and that might be, and it's sort of like, oh, cool, we've bought ourselves, like, another year. And then, you know, like, oh, wow, we're doing better than we expected. Maybe this is a bigger thing. And it kind of kept slowly building. But it felt very strange to be having that success when obviously the Australian industry specifically was struggling so much. It was super exciting, but it was difficult to not be aware of what was going on around us and all of that as well. Yeah. But yeah, so for me, my lowlights definitely stepped kind of outside that, because obviously we were kind of on this crazy
trajectory.
Crazy trajectory, because at that very GCAP, I remember, like, Chenille sent every single person at Half Brick Studios to that GCAP, and we all had shirts, and you would go to the sessions and there'd be like 20 Half Brick shirts kind of lined up. So it really felt weird that we were like, look how good we're doing.
Oh no.
Oh no.
It's like...
For me, I guess like a lot of my lowlights are less to do with what's going on in a broader industry and more just stuff that was happening for me at the time. Like, one of the easily the hardest and most stressful day of my career by far was a year and a half, 2 years ago, when Feed the Deep launched, when it first launched on PC. It was my first solo game, and I'd done this thing where the planned launch was to come out at 5 a.m. on a Saturday. It's like kind of the last hour you could release on Steam. And the idea was to try and use my YouTube audience to get a huge, like, punch for an hour and really capitalize on that last hour, and then hopefully kind of hold there over the weekend in the new and upcoming charts. So I got up at 5 a.m. Obviously, you know, the rest of Australia is asleep. All the sensible Australians are asleep. And at this point, the game hadn't changed for 2 weeks. I'd been testing the hell out of it. And just, you know, I'm obviously so nervous because I put everything into this game. And I had tested it in all the different languages, right? I had tested it to make sure that if your system language is set to Spanish, it boots up in Spanish. Anyway, so the game comes out, and 7 minutes after it launches, I'm finally starting to get Steam reviews. Very exciting, because everyone says getting the first 10 Steam reviews really matters. I have 3 Steam reviews, and they're all negative, and they all say the game is completely broken.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh God. And immediately, like, you know, I've been in launches before where the launch has had a really disastrous start, but only ever in a team. Even when it was a really small team, when we were pretty great, and there'd be like 4 of us launching a game, there's other people, but at this point, there's me alone in a room and no one to talk to about what's going on. And so I feel like I'm the one that's invested so much into this, and I'm the only one that can fix it. And someone sent me a screenshot, and basically I was able to quickly figure out what had happened. It was peak time in Europe, including kind of like Finland and Norway, right? And what it turned out is if you tried to boot the game in a language that wasn't supported, it would fall back into the first column of the localization spreadsheet. The first column of the localization spreadsheet was the context for the translators. Oh, no. So it was like the context column, and instead of the word play, I thought it would fall back into English and the play button would say play. But instead it says, this is a button where when the player presses it, the game begins.
Oh no.
And so I was just like, I was falling apart, and I managed to get it patched, and thank God Steam basically lets you patch things instantly and you don't have to go through a round of approvals. I had it patched and fixed in 35 minutes straight.
Jeez.
And it was the worst 35 minutes of my career.
Oh my God.
Like, and I think just being on your own is made that 100 times worse.
So you had no one else to call up and
I mean, technically I could have called up someone for help. I could have called up Chevy and he could have walked through it with me, but it's being like solo, and you would know this as well, like being a solo developer, no one, like for you, it's your whole world. And for the other people that you contract in, it's obviously they care about you and they care about the project, but it's not, you don't kind of have that camaraderie of like that shared experience. Instead of being like this, instead of like trauma bonding with someone else, it was just trauma.
Oh man, okay. Yowzers.
But I do think it's like and I mean, unfortunately I can think of a lot of other like fun, in retrospect, lowlights. But I do think like kind of enduring some of those things is part of what leads to a long career in games. If you were only stuck around because good things happen.
Oh, totally, yeah. I'm thinking we did have some negative times in the early days, like doing things like the original Halloween Harry and Amazon Queen, which was kind of challenging. But yeah, I think it was a small team. We had like 3 or 4 of us, so we could commiserate together and get over it. But yeah, as a complete by yourself, that'd be pretty frightening.
It is like, I think like all the other times that something bad happened, I think that in a way it feels like a funny story to me now because I went through it with other people, and it is that kind of like you feel very connected with those people doing that thing. Yep. Anyway, I feel like we should get off the like, we're being positive. One of the reasons I wanted to pick John to come up and do this fireside with me is he's literally the most optimistic, positive developer that I know. And he's been doing it the longest, which feels like 2 things that don't match.
I can get negative about things, but yeah, I do try to look at the light side.
But so like, yeah, obviously there's a lot of ups and downs through your career. What would you say is like some of the most important factors to having a long career in video games?
Well, definitely, I think the optimism, looking at positive things. In fact, I've got a little thing here to read, which I think is relevant to this. Is Jordan Mechner, who everyone knows from Prince of Persia. So one of the things I think is really important to know is that there's always, more opportunities no matter what happens, because I think it's very easy to get depressed and go. I heard people feel like they miss the mobile gold rush or they miss different things. So I always look at it, there's always something happening. There's always a new opportunity that's coming out there. So I share this with different people. Jordan Mechner, in his book, if anyone's read the Boss Fight books, I think it is, they have, you know those ones?
I know them, but I haven't read them.
So there was a great quote from his journal when doing Karateka, and this stuck with me, was it's July 1984. He's speaking to people from Broderbund. He said, Scott and Dane came over and we talked about the good old days. All the programmers seem to have this feeling that the golden age is past. And I'm reading this is from 1984, the year I started making Chili Willy, and I thought, that's what I thought back then. And then he goes on, he says, it seems there's not as much money to be made either. Royalties are 30% in Doug Smith and Denny Golan's day. I think it's the guys that did, is it Lode Runner? And now they're down to 15%. That's what the developers are getting paid. Lode Runner may have been the last big hit. There you go. So this is Jordan Mechner commiserating with him about how it's all over and it's terrible. So when I hear people talk about that, even today, it's like there's always opportunity out there. There's always something else. So that keeps me positive. What was the rest of the question? Sorry.
I guess just like, what do you think is some skills or some attitudes to having a long career? So
you're having that attitude and learning. I think the other thing too is important is just for me, it's just trying to do stuff that's different. I love to, as I think TC might be here, but Apple Watch was something I was really excited by, and so I generally rush into new places, probably to the detriment. Sometimes we were doing Facebook games at one point, which we all know how well they've gone, but I do think it's good to look at different areas and try different. I like to take risks, is what I'm saying. I think that's important to have that risk mindset. Try to have a bit of positivity about things and just learning. So I will be attracted to things that are different and unusual. I think it's important.
Yeah, I definitely think for me, I guess what keeps me interested in making games is the learning part. And usually when I've changed careers, when I've changed jobs or changed roles, it's almost always been to do something new that I haven't done before. So I was at Half Brick for 8 years, and obviously I learned an insane amount during that time. But in the last year of that, by that time, I was doing the same thing I had been doing for quite a while, which was running a team and making mobile games and all of that. And to be clear, like, I could have done different things, but that's sort of what I was doing. And so leaving and starting Pretty Great was like, well, I've never run a business before, never been a part of something from the beginning. So I really wanted to do that. And then when I left Snapchat, it was a very similar thing. We'd been making games for Snapchat for a few years, and I was like, I really feel like the first year of Snapchat was amazing because I learnt so much. It was like, wow, this is what Silicon Valley is like, which was very interesting and entertaining to learn. And then eventually it becomes like a grind. And so the whole reason I wanted to do solo development was it meant I had to learn how to program. It meant I had to learn how to do art. It literally forced me to learn new things. And I think that has been a big thing for me in terms of adapting to the industry and to the needs and all of that, but also just it feels like it fills me up, learning all the time. And so undoubtedly, if I'm still making solo games in another 2 years, I will probably be sick of it and I'll need to do something else. Like, same thing where it's like I always need that kind of change. If I was just in the one role, I would. Well, I mean, and we'll talk about it in a minute, I will burn out.
Yes.
Because that's what I do.
Well, we can talk about, exactly. No, that's good. And programming though for you, was that a challenge? Did you find that hard to switch from the designer? And you were doing art as well, I believe, is that right?
Yeah, I do, like I said, my university degree was like programming and art. And so I do have like a bit to build on there. I found picking up programming not easy, but like it felt like it came okay to me. Art, no. Art is easily the biggest challenge for me. I think I can compose things okay. If there's elements, I think I know how to put them together in a vaguely pleasing way, but kind of creating like something from nothing. And I've had to kind of come up with games that involve me dodging that deficiency and I try and kind of learn how to get past that, but I seriously feel like that's a massive uphill challenge for me, trying to get through that.
That it is like that, in music is another big challenge.
Music just also no. Although I did solo development, I got Cedar to write all my music because he's amazing, and that's something I have tried, but honestly for like one day, and I was like, nope, this isn't it.
It gives you appreciation of
massive appreciation. I mean, we kind of touched on it. Like, it's difficult for me to imagine because you are so enthusiastic and so positive, but have you ever burnt out? Have you ever been like, I want to leave the games industry?
Well, I had the opposite, because when I did my games, and I did 2 games when I was in high school, and both were published, which is exciting. So purely by luck, as I said, I happened to be there at the beginning. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. You'd have somebody else on stage here with you. But I did a computer science degree, and I always thought games would be fun to do, but it wasn't really any career path in the late 80s, well, at least in Brisbane there wasn't, to do that. I ended up working for Telecom, which is now Telstra, and my burnout there was the job was so tedious and terrible. It was like working with COBOL. It was the complete opposite of what we'd... the degree I did was called a Bachelor of Informatics, which is a very hippy-dippy sort of degree, because a lot of our lecturers are from California, and so it was actually... A lot of the subjects we did was very much like what Wired magazine would have years later. So we were very lucky at the cutting edge of, I think, a new sort of format of computer science. It was a lot of essay writing. I really enjoyed it. But then I worked for a company, Telecom, which, God bless them, they were all lovely people, but it was just tedious. And so I ended up actually hating computers, and I didn't have a computer at home. So I'd grown up with computers, and at this stage I hated it so much, I just didn't even play computer games. I just was depressed about it. And it was only through... a chance meeting with Steve Stamatiadis at the comic shop, because one of my friends who was at the degree with me dropped out of the degree and started working at a comic book shop, and I collected comics. So saw Steve, and he wrote comics and drew comics, and he knew I made games when I was a kid, and said we should make a game. And I was really reluctant to do that because I actually hated computers. So I was in that very depressed mode. But he had an Amiga, I saw it, then that started to rekindle my love for computers, and everything came back again. So, yeah, we ended up working together and made the Halloween Harry remake, the first one, and then Amazon Queen. So I came out of that rut of hating life. And I had another experience too. But what about you?
No, please go.
Well, the second one was, and there's people here, we ran an accelerator program with Dan Vogt, which is a lot of fun with people. The accelerator petered out, ran its course. This is the 2015, 16 or so. But at that point, it was like, what do I do now? And I did have an offer from Gameloft to work with them. And at that point, I thought, you mentioned before about going back and doing the same thing again. It would have been a great job with Gameloft. Sorry, they didn't. I think I accepted it. But I had this crisis of confidence, or not confidence, crisis going, I'd be kind of doing what I did with pandemic. I'd be doing the same thing I'd done 10 years before. And I just felt I needed a change. And at that point, I actually dropped out for a few years. And of all things, worked with I had a friend who was at a mining company doing mining software. And I'm not the biggest supporter of mining, but they were like, it was, we do have to dig up, minerals and things to make iPhones and everything, so it's important. But they had software that optimized the mining process, and they'd asked me to come in at one stage and do some consultation on their UI. And I was like, I'm a game developer, I'm not a UI specialist. And they said, no, come on in. So I went and did some work with them for like 2 weeks, and it was actually really interesting. And what I found great was that people there were really lovely, and it was a really nice environment to work at. So when my crisis of thinking about what I'm going to do next, and just that thought of doing the same thing I've been doing like 10 years ago really played on me. I thought, I'm just going to do something different. So I just reached out and said, is there any other work you've got going? They said, yeah, come on in. So I ended up doing work with this company. And what was good about it was I got to bring in other people. So Kira and Addy, I'm not sure if Kira's here, but I got them, Kira and Addy, to come in and do some visualization for like, VR work, visualizing their software in 3D. And so, yeah, I did that for 2.5 years. So, yeah, that was nice. And that helped me reset everything and sort of get back into the games industry. So
it's sort of is like you burn out back into the games industry.
That's exactly, yeah. So yeah, take a break. Yeah, exactly, yeah. But I mean, it was great. So that was a fun process. It was only Matt didn't call me up at one point and maybe an offer I couldn't refuse to work on some new secret projects. And I thought, this is great. So I was energized enough to come back in, and I got to work with Matt and the team at Mighty Games and doing some really cool stuff with prototyping, which I really love doing. What about you?
I feel like I have burned out at least 3 times so far. Like possibly 4. I feel like I burn out really easily, and I don't know why, but like it definitely affects me. And I kind of like, there was a period near the end of Half Brick where I took 6 months off, and then kind of, because I just felt fried, basically. Like I just didn't have any energy or excitement for the games, and I knew like that I needed that space. And at that point, I'd been working for a fairly long time. And then I burnt out again towards the end of Snapchat. And that time it had been a smaller period of time.
Oh, right.
Do you know what I mean? Like the gaps between the burnout. And at that point I think I took 4 months off. I feel very fortunate that I was afforded the opportunity to be able to take that time off. I've talked to people who are like, I feel really burnt out, so I think I'm going to take a week off. Oh. And I'm like, a week? Really? Like, and in fairness, like that person really did bounce back, but I find it takes me a really long time to recover. And I find during that period, I'm very like existential crisis. Like, do I even want to still make video games? Like, I feel like it'd be really easy for me to burn out of the industry and never come back. And, right now I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but again, it's like, it's not difficult for me to imagine in 2 years' time that I'm like, okay, I'm done with that now, and I need something completely new.
Right.
I definitely find I burn out. I don't know if I burn out easily or what it is, but I've definitely burnt out a bunch of times, and every time I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, whether it's video games or not. And I also do find like I don't really... Part of it, I think, is like I don't really play games that much anymore in terms of being a player. I'm really infinitely psyched about design, and the thing that I happen to design is games. Don't get me wrong, I love games, but I could probably be as happy designing chairs or just like literally designing anything. I don't think I'll ever burn out of design, but it'd be very easy for me to imagine burning out and never coming back to games. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, at least right now, I'm in a really good place, which is great. But I know that it's fickle and it'll change in the next year or 2 or 3.
I'm curious, because from where I sit, you've no, I've written my notes there, like, like the Steven Spielberg of game design in terms of, no, that's seriously, like, I looked at the Fruit Ninja numbers and it's like 2 billion downloads a game you designed. That's inconceivable. I can't even imagine that. Like, so is it part of that you just achieve these, like, it's almost like you've suddenly bucket list goals have been ticked off so early? Is that what it is, and there's challenges gone?
It's a good question. I don't think it's that, but it's difficult because like my relationship with Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride is so complicated. Like I have accepted the fact that for the rest of my life I will be introduced as like the Fruit Ninja guy, and it happens in like social circles. Like when I'm with friends and introduced to like new friends, they'll be like, "Oh, this is Luke. He makes games. He's the Fruit Ninja guy," kind of thing. And I've sort of come to and part of the problem is like I figured out pretty quick during my solo development period is it's really hard to differentiate yourself as a developer. Right? There's a million indie developers. So I say I'm the Fruit Ninja guy.
You've embraced it.
I mean, I kind of have to in a way because it literally, like if I find a way to slip that into my YouTube videos in the first 30 seconds, it does about 5x better than if I don't.
Wow.
Like you can just see it. And if I'm reaching out to like streamers and influencers for whatever I'm doing next, it's like, it's a card I have to play. And so it's difficult for me to fully pull apart like how I feel about that. I think at the end of the day, having a game that, obviously I want like my games to reach lots of people because that feels good, and it also helps me like pay my mortgage, which is really nice. But I think I care more about a game meaning a lot to someone than it meaning something to a lot of people, if that makes sense. Like, so I don't think it necessarily is why I burn out, but it is. I have had to like grapple with the fact that like there's just no way I ever make anything as successful as those games. Like it's to be realistic, it's not going to happen.
It's a phenomenon. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Oh wow, we're like blowing through the time.
We
were like really worried that we'd run out of things to say after like 15 minutes.
And if we're boring, you just say bing bong or something.
One of the other things I had to talk about was, I think something that's interesting is that for people who are in, and this is not unique to game development at all, but if you're in a career for a long time, kind of the de facto thing to happen is you end up in a managerial role.
Yes.
Right, like that happens a lot. Why aren't you a manager?
Well, I'd be terrible at it. That's one of the reasons. But it's not where my passion is. And I think back to the burnout thing, for me, I like to have the challenge. I love to be hands-on. And I do, with the example I mentioned with working at the mining company was, I sort of drove that virtual reality thing because I was interested in that space. And I saw an opportunity saying, hey, if we did this would be really exciting. And I know the people I can bring in, which was Addy and Kira, that would be really exciting. So, that's a big, yes. So, what was the? I'm sorry.
About being a manager.
So basically, that be. So for me, it's I just want to be hands-on. So I've actively avoided those roles as much as I can do.
To kind of like keep that thought going. Like,
Yes.
Do you have a career plan? Like, have you ever had a career plan? Do you have a career plan now? Do you know kind of where you are going to be?
I know where my end point would be. Which is sitting in a cafe somewhere with a laptop, making small little indie games. That's definitely what I head to. So I want to be hands-on making stuff. Definitely, that's the career plan. And I do. I mean, with the work I'm doing with Mighty, I'm very lucky that we've got a great team, and I get to do prototyping, and which I love. Just rapidly building stuff and proving out ideas, and working with other great designers and.
That's kind of the dream, right? To just get to prototype.
It is wonderful. I mean, obviously you've got to build stuff, but yeah, I'm very lucky in that process, and I'm very lucky that we've got a great team of people who are good managers there, because I would be terrible at it. But no, I do purposely am looking for roles where I can be hands-on, because that's what I love doing. I guess one of the things I think about in terms of the end game is I look at filmmakers, and there's Mad Max. I'm going to blank now because I'm in front of people, but people like George Miller, Catherine Bigelow, who's got a movie coming out end of this year. She's in her 70s. Ridley Scott's in his 80s. That's my kind of ideal. I look at those people. I mean, it applies to every medium. I'm sure there's chair makers who are in their 80s making chairs, but I think
they're mostly in their 80s.
Oh,
somehow.
yeah, they would be, yeah. But I look at that as I'd like to see that as the end game, to be still hands-on creating ideas and implementing games at that age. So I look at those people who are still they're doing it in Hollywood, and that inspires me.
That's cool.
What's your end game? Do you see yourself?
I have no idea.
Making chairs?
I have like little milestones that I give myself, and I don't ever really look beyond that. So when I started the solo thing, I was like, I was basically like, I'm going to give myself 3 games / 5 years to see if this is a thing or not. Like I had a bit of money saved from when I was at Snapchat, so I knew I could weather a couple of storms. I mean, to be clear, if it was obviously a disaster in the first 2 years, then I would make that decision sooner. But I'm kind of starting to get towards the point of after this. Basically, this may surprise you, but games take longer to make than you think they do. I know this is shocking news to everyone. After this next game, I feel like I need to sit and assess what I want to do next, because unless this next game does well, I need to figure out whether the juice is worth the squeeze, basically. Because the games are doing okay, to be clear, and I'm really enjoying it, but I am working way too hard and putting way too much stress in for the results, which is fine. Like, I'm happy to do that for a while, but I'm not going to do that for 20 years. There's you know what? It would have been really good as a slide. There's a really good photo of myself, Phil, and Hugh on the day that we started Pretty Great. And then a photo of the 3 of us the day that Pretty Great sold. And it is like, it's only 3 years apart, and you would swear it was like at least 10 years apart. Okay. Like, we really wore the stress of that period kind of on our faces and in our bodies.
I've seen that photo.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, I definitely don't have like a full career plan. Mostly I'm thinking like 1 or 2 projects ahead. And I try to be very introspective about what I'm enjoying and what I'm not, and not just like, I try and make very intentional choices, but they're never like kind of moving towards some long-term goal. Yeah. They're all pretty short-term, I guess. It's difficult for me to imagine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes before we were going to try and kick to some questions. I wanted to like throw the actually no, we'll save that for later because it'll take up too much time. John, what would be your advice for someone who's been in the industry for, I don't know, let's call it 19 years?
Okay.
Who hopes that they might be in the industry at, say, 41 years? Oh, like, geez. I would love some advice. Oh. I would like advice from you to me about like what I should do for that kind of longevity. Okay,
I feel like you're doing a good job as it is.
I don't know if I am, because I was just saying I don't know where I'll be in 2 years.
Well, I think definitely that advice of, keeping learning. I mean, you're doing that already. Learning, that's definitely important. And intentionality, like I think choosing the right thing to do next with intention is important. And then when you're in that, whatever you're doing is I always try to think where things are going, like in the future, like what are the trends that are coming up. And as I said, I get them wrong with Facebook and different things like that. But I think it's important to know that when you choose a role or a project, it has some way of growing you in some way. So I think it's super important.
I like that. Yeah, that's really nice.
I think for young people, I'd say learn business. That's important. But I think if you're 20 years in, you should at least know some of that by now. But yeah, I think intentionality is important.
I like that. Like this project will grow you in some way is like actually a really like good, like kind growth mindset way of thinking about, especially thinking about tough projects. Yeah. And
it may mean not taking the big bucks as well. So you might pick something that's maybe not as rewarding financially, but maybe more rewarding in terms of growing you.
Yeah, I really like that.
What's your advice then for the people starting out, and what's your advice for people starting out?
Well, I don't know, because I feel like I'm barely hanging on.
Yeah, and everyone here is
a lot of the time. But I guess like for me, it would be about always like growing and adapting, because it's I think it's very easy to like stagnate and be like, and to kind of pigeonhole, and you're like, this is what I do and I do it well. And I mean, but to be fair, I think that there is, like, I know developers that I've worked with who thrive in that kind of environment as well. So I think it's extremely personal, but I think you can always be like growing and adapting in some way. And that, you know, I think that stops you from, you know, you're always developing professionally, and that keeps things interesting. So. Yeah. Did you have something else, or will we kick to questions?
Well, actually, no. The only thing I was going to ask, I was curious. I should have asked this before, but
That's okay.
with, like I mentioned before, with Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride, like, you know, you had one massive hit, and then you get the second one. Were you aware of that? Were you aware that the impact it was having on people out there? Or were you? Because I know friends who've had massive hits, and they don't really realize what they have until 5 years later. They go, "Oh, I had a hit."
Yeah.
Were you aware of that?
I don't, not fully at least. I was at least partially, but it's difficult because like when the feedback that you're getting is like a dashboard with numbers, you know, like, I mean, the thing that I remember being more impactful was seeing someone playing it like in the wild, someone that I didn't ask to play it. Because it's really difficult when it's like, well, clearly this must be having an impact because it's had however many millions of downloads. But it's also like, that's not a number that really makes any sense to my brain. It's just like such an abstract concept. And I feel like interestingly, like the YouTube videos feel like they've actually made that land for me more, because like on the videos about how I designed Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride, there's so many comments there that are like, this was my childhood.
Yeah, exactly.
This was like, I grew up playing this. And people will dropping like their personal stories. Like, you know, my mum was in the hospital and like we used to take turns playing Jetpack Joyride. Like that was one of the things we did while and it's like that has really helped it kind of land, like the impact with me. So in a weird way, I feel like it's come 15 years later.
That's crazy. There's a lot of comments there, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right, I think it'd be cool to try and kick to some questions, if anyone has any questions. It's actually really difficult for us to see because of the way the lights are.
Yeah.
But if someone could pass the microphone around for us, that would be great.
I've had the exceptional fortune of learning some amazing things from Luke. But John, this is a question for you. What amazing things have you been able to share with people in your experience over 40 years? Like, how have you imparted that kind of experience to, you know, younger generations coming into games?
Okay, so that was the audio just kicked in then from the back. So you said, what experience have I been able to impart to?
Just like up and coming people, you know, the new generation of, you know, developers that you've worked with, and how have you shared that amazing amount of experience with them?
That's a good question. I wonder myself if I am doing it properly, because I do have, you know, there's always that kind of worry, am I communicating it correctly to people? I do try to be positive and tell people, like for example, at Mighty Games, I probably, sounds changed again. So it's like spatial audio here, so moving backs and forwards. Like at Mighty Games, I do think what the projects we're doing right now, I try to tell the team that we're in a really lucky place, that we're rapidly prototyping and building lots of games. Like there's 13 games the team has built in literally 3 years, which is phenomenal. And I do bang on about it. It's a bit like Half-Brick. And I think out of Half-Brick, one thing I think is amazing is that because you guys had worked on so many, you know, THQ games, which probably people at the time are going, this is kind of probably not top tier, but it just honed your skills. You just learned so much, and you can see it by the fact that everyone out of Half-Brick has gone on to amazing careers. And yeah, so I try to impart on people that, you know, that excitement, enthusiasm that what we're doing is good. I don't know if that's any helpful. That's sorry, that's a dumb answer.
Do you think you'll ever retire, or do you think this stuff's in your blood?
I'll retire so fast, man. I probably would always dabble, but like not having to grind it out. Like, I'll retire so quick. I know where I'll retire.
You've got it worked out, haven't you? You're going to be in a beach
Oh, go up to
somewhere.
Maggie Island.
Yeah.
That's the long-term. I have the long-term plan, just
Yeah.
not for my career.
No, never. No, my wife was joking with her friends playing golf, and one of them had retired, and she came back to work because I think she was bored. And my wife said, "Yeah, my husband's never retiring because I just want to keep doing it. It'll probably be senile games or something. I don't know. As long as I keep my brain working, that'll be fine. But yeah, I want to keep making games. I do enjoy it. They're not necessarily good games, but they'll be still games."
For John,
Thanks, Matt.
40 years, that's a lot of hardware cycles. So what's your most favourite piece of hardware and your least favourite piece of hardware over that time?
They're interesting. I was talking to Tony Albrecht about this before, and someone mentioned the DS. That one was probably, if I really look at it, not in terms of development, but in terms of playing, I love the DS. It was just crazy. That was such an innovative console. That's definitely my favourite. But also, in terms of me, development-wise, a lot of stuff was not necessarily programming things. I always do like prototype programming, and then real programmers come in and make the real game. So with things like Thai, I worked on the prototype that was on a PC, and then real programmers worked on the PlayStation version. But definitely DS and PlayStation, they were like, I think, game-changing for me in terms of what they could do. There we go. Why don't you? Yeah. What's the worst? Oh God, the worst. They're all good. I don't know.
No, they're not.
No, I don't. People got some answers. No, I don't think they're all. You must have one. What's your worst?
I mean, it's difficult because it's not like a clear line in the sand, but like it's kind of difficult to not throw out modern mobile. Like, I mean, that's actually changing a little bit, but mobile kind of 2009 to 2015, I would say one of the greatest. Like, that was such a golden age. It was, and not just because the money was flowing. It was like, there was so many phenomenal, like, interesting, innovative games every week. And I just don't open the App Store anymore, unfortunately. Hopefully that's going to keep changing. But it's difficult for me to not put that up as, I think partly because it's the continuation, like you see the change from that golden age. So if you want me to throw one under the bus, that's what the easy one I'm going to throw, I think.
I was going to say, the advice for young people too is to go back and look at, those older games. And that's, with the prototyping I do, I'll often pick something from the past and think about if this had been a hit and kept going, where would it evolve to in modern day sensibilities? I think it's a really good thing. I know Matt's nodding his head because that's a great way of doing it. Because I feel that I do talk to some people and their kind of memory or knowledge goes back to like 2016. There's so much beyond that earlier that we can look at.
Hi, that's a great segue into my question. So you talked before about seeing something rising from the ashes, because obviously both of you and probably many of us here have seen hard times in the industry. And I wanted to know, like, what do you want to see rise from the ashes of today, considering, what we're going through? What do you hope for?
Well, I'm bullish. I've mentioned this before at work. I'm bullish on web. I think web's coming back. I think HTML5 games, I think that's the future. That's me. Again, I picked Facebook and I picked other things that didn't necessarily go anywhere, but I feel that's the next gold rush. I don't think people are fully aware of that yet, but they will be, I hope.
Yeah, I guess I want to just keep seeing more and more like original, interesting games and mechanics, and it's interesting because there's so many games that are like an entire package now, and it kind of like a lot of things exist within that package, and obviously there's a lot of creativity within that, within like the UGC platforms, but like I can't wait to see more like wacky, interesting, independent ideas, and I really hope that that's always what I want, is more interesting ideas. But I have no idea what the actual rising is going to be because it's so difficult to predict. But that's what I hope, at least. I think we got time for one more short question.
Oh, there we go. Oh, 10, 9, 8.
We're just going to go a little bit over.
I was going to ask you, John, without necessarily picking a side or something on the AI front, but obviously you have such a passion for the craft, and then the promise of AI is the the ease at which you can then go and vibe out your own game.
Yeah.
Do you see that as being like, and you talked of your love of emerging technologies as well, so is that a space where you see yourself jumping into, or is it actually taking away from the passion for you?
Well, look, I think for me, I'm not necessarily. I use ChatGPT to validate things, like particularly with like WatchOS. There's some stuff there which I just don't know the arcane stuff. I'll ask ChatGPT, what's the best way to do something with iOS, and it'll come back because, no offense to anyone from Apple, but the documentation isn't the best, so it's like a great way to fill that out and give me what Google would give me. But I like to make stuff, so I don't necessarily want to. I mean, I could use Fiverr and pay somebody to make a game for me, but that's not much fun. So for me, I don't want to vibe it out. I'm in it for the craft of it, but I don't blame anyone else who does, because you may be an amazing artist, but you can't program, and this is a great way to get your art out there. But I love to tinker and program.
I mean, we're just going to have to end it because the thing has been blinking zero at us for some minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Please feel free to come and ask us more after. I'm going to record some B-roll for my next YouTube video, and thank you very much.
Very cool. Thank you.